I understand when a man says that she can just walk away. If it's that bad, she can just pack up and walk away. And quite honestly, that was the attitude I had because I didn't know.
And I had one patient who was pregnant who came in with her husband. He was always hovering over her when I couldn't talk to her alone. And she came in with unusual bruises, and I asked her if everything's okay, and the answer was yes, with her husband standing inches away. Long story short, he killed her, and she was pregnant at the time. So basically he killed 2 people, domestic violence.
Every time I read a headline in a story about someone that is killed in a domestic violence related incident, the first thing I think is it did not have to happen.
As an 11-year-old, I witnessed my father having a confrontation with my mother, and he hit her.
I remember my brother and I being in our bedroom, listening to the violence.
Domestic violence is, it is among us. It is among us.
You know, I was staggered last year to hear that there were over 70,000 calls to our hotline, understanding that our hotline only reaches so many people, only so many people even know about it. But then this last summer to have 18 people die as a result of this and leave so many children without a parent, it's tragic, it's a frontline issue, and I can't believe the magnitude of it, particularly after as many years as people have been working to address it.
I think that oftentimes men tend to not think that it is as commonplace as it is, but domestic violence is something that affects all races, all socioeconomic backgrounds.
This is a community issue, and there are no boundaries. There's no city limit or county line. It is a seamless community in which we live.
Oftentimes, the children are forgotten about in domestic violence, and I feel like they're the ones that are probably most greatly affected by it.
The seed is planted when that violent act takes place. Whether it's that child laying in their bed at night, listening to the war in the kitchen, whether it's that daughter in her bedroom when someone else comes in there that doesn't belong. That's when the seed is planted, and it begins a cycle, a vicious cycle, that unless we interact, it won't be broken, because that seed of violence is planted right then and right there, and it will resurrect itself.
Our jails are full of people who grew up in homes where there was domestic violence. We are all impacted. It's not just that we know somebody that is living with domestic violence. We are all impacted by domestic violence every day.
Our youth grow up in homes where there's a lot of stress. There's not a lot of communication alternatives. It's easier to lash out and be verbal and be negative. That's what's modeled. And because it's modeled so much and there's so little education that deals with it at an early age, that it just manifests itself into this big problem and becomes a problem for all of us.
Well, I think the thing that I think is important, and really why men need to get involved in this issue, is because men perpetuate most of the problems. And to the extent that they initiate most of the violence, I think men have a responsibility to step up and confront that issue.
You know, men hold the key to a stable relationship in many cases. And we have the option to stay out of it and just watch, or we can take the lead role, like we should, and get involved.
For most of our history, not only in this country but all over the world, it has been women who have led the charge and made progress in the battered women's movement. And it's time for men to stand up alongside women and say that we're not going to tolerate domestic violence either.
If women feel like they have men's support, then it's going to embolden them. It's going to give them strength. It's going to give them confidence that their spouse or people around them do care, male friends do care, that society does care, and we're not turning our backs on what's going on, and we're not going to accept the fact that every night our women's shelters are full.
It is totally unmanly to impose violence upon your loved ones. It's completely unacceptable.
I think the more men that make it an unacceptable behavior, the more impact we'll have on those people that often choose that kind of a response in life.
Men need to show courage. What I mean by that is when they are exposed to domestic violence, whether it's at a social gathering, at a bar, at the very least, if they see a woman being treated in a disrespectful manner or a dangerous manner, they need to speak up.
Whether it's in the context of sports or business or intellect, it's not okay to refer to women as in any way lesser than men.
If you're around friends and you hear sexist remarks or remarks negative towards women, that you stand up against that and you say, you know, that's not a joke. And I definitely don't take it that way. And I've done that more than once. And I think that it's a small thing that we can do, but it's something that we have to do.
I read the signs, I got all my stars aligned.
And I think if more men become aware of the needs to become better at being a father or at being a brother or a husband, I think domestic violence would decrease drastically.
It's good to have our female volunteers also, but being able to have another man to stand up and say, you know, it's not okay, you know, I am here for you, I understand the situation, you know, I want to be there for you. It's just good for not just our teen boys, for all children to realize that there are men in the world that aren't abusers.
This county does have a heart and it does have a soul, and we would like to set that example of how you raise the bar in how people should be treated. And we need to ensure that the message is loud and clear. In Fort Worth, Texas, in Tarrant County, we're not going to sit idly by when that happens.
There's always the accusation of, why are you delving into the private lives of other people? And you know, as long as it's a crime, as long as it's wrong by every standard of a civilized society, yeah, I'll get involved.